Welcome to SUNY New Paltz, a university in the top 8% hardest schools of New York State to get into, with competitive arts programs, extensive science and engineering programs, various clubs for students to participate in, and renowned education and business programs. There is one thing that New Paltz does share with many other college universities: the food. Specifically the dining hall provider. If you've ever visited a university in North America, chances are you've seen their name, but you probably never really thought too much about them. Sodexo. Sodexo provides food service, accommodations, and facility management services to over 1,000 universities, colleges, and independent schools in the United States and in 35 other countries around the world. The relatively young company was launched in 1966 by French billionaire Pierre Bellin, initially serving company restaurants, schools, and hospitals. Since then, they have branched out their business in more ways than one. Today, Sodexo serves many sectors, including private corporations, government agencies, schools from preschool through university, hospitals and clinics, assisted living facilities, military bases, and prisons. You'll hear more about that later. All that to say, they are a prominent company. Why are they worth talking about? Because there's a lot below the surface of this company. Let's start with the simplest dots to connect: the food. And this is more than a couple of undergrads complaining about cold pizza. In 2007, Sodexo was involved in a scandal that forced them to recall over 3,000 pounds of chicken due to listeria contaminations. In 2012, Sodexo's frozen food supply was linked to a massive outbreak of food poisoning in Germany that affected over 11,000 children. Sodexo has also been tied to various E. coli outbreaks in Germany, Wisconsin, and California. And one of their more well-known controversies, in 2013, Sodexo withdrew all of their frozen beef products following a test that concluded that their beef products contained horse DNA. That's right. The main supplier for food at over 1,000 college universities is linked to listeria, E. coli, massive food poisoning, and serving customers horse meat. Customers aren't the only people who have been having problems with Sodexo. Their treatment of employees has a history of making headlines as well. A class action discrimination lawsuit was filed in 2001 by thousands of African American employees, claiming that they were continuously denied promotions and certain high-paying jobs, as well as managers saying racist remarks, such as one man being quoted as saying this. In 2005, Sodexo decided to pay $80 million to settle the class action case. It was one of the biggest race-related job bias settlements at the time. You might have thought that that would lead to some change in the company, but there have been 4 lawsuits filed against Sodexo since then, as recently as 2019, leading to them paying approximately $943,877 for employee discrimination since then. Even on the New Paltz campus, there have been reports of racial firings. This year, a black employee was fired for violence after being shoved by his white manager.
Hi, my name is Christopher McKinney. My previous job was working as the handoff person at World of Wings Cafe, which is owned by Sodexo. I was fired from World of Wings for an altercation that occurred between me and my supervisor, Nick. I felt like he kept trying to escalate the situation into something that it wasn't. He continued to try to belittle me and constantly yelling at me, even though I was talking very calmly to him. The end result of me getting fired is crazy because I felt as though I did nothing wrong. I definitely think it was not legal because I know they didn't turn in any camera footage. They just went with the fact that it was a person of color who went off like this on their supervisor and just disregarded the fact that I was purposely belittled by this man and he was purposely antagonizing me. I would say that I definitely faced racial discrimination because I personally feel that if I was a white man, the situation would not have gotten to where it got. I don't believe I would have been fired. It's literally the semester before this happened, which was the first semester of WOW in general. The only black supervisor that we had, he quit because he didn't like the way he was being treated. I just think that Sodexo supervisors feel the need to try to get a one-up on you in a situation that doesn't need to resort to the crazy lengths that it gets to because of the fact that they constantly antagonize their employees. And it's just, you don't provide help, you don't provide an adequate enough pay. It just, all in all, the whole situation sucks. and I really hope Sodexo does better in the future, because that was genuinely one of the most shocking experiences in my life.
Discrimination isn't the only problem these employees have been facing either. Sodexo was also sued in 2010 for both preventing workers from organizing and paying them poverty wages. In 2011, some of Sodexo workers' wages were so low that they qualified for federal welfare. Also in 2011, one employee who had been with Sodexo for 40 years was only earning $7.42.
22nd largest corporation in the world, and yet it pays its workers the lowest wages in America. They had the unemployment offices refer to them only people as possible employees who were on parole or probation, so that if those people quit their jobs because the conditions were so awful, they would get sent back to prison. Sodexo pays all of its employees well below what the government says is the poverty level wage.
This Sodexo employee mentions another unethical practice that Sodexo uses. They specifically hire employees that have to work for them or they will be sent back to prison, practically holding their employees hostage. Not only has the company had a history of criminally underpaying their employees, but Sodexo has a history of failing to protect the workplace safety too. Since 2000, the U.S. Occupational Health and Safety Administration has conducted over 100 investigations into dangerous conditions at Sodexo facilities. Sodexo has a total of 25 workplace safety and health violations, resulting in them having paid over $300,000 in fines. You would think that in recent years, being a food service company amidst a pandemic, they would get more serious about their safety of their employees and more serious about their health precautions, right? Well, I'm sure it will come as a shock to you to learn that as recently as October 2021, Sodexo allegedly encouraged employees to ignore COVID safety protocols. One Sodexo employee said that she tested positive for COVID-19, but was encouraged to keep working despite feeling ill for several days, being quoted as saying, "Management said that I needed to work, and for me to just take ibuprofen and drink Gatorade." Another Sodexo employee claims that the staff is no longer encouraged to sanitize surfaces once customers leave the dining area, and that COVID safety is hardly even discussed anymore. In one case in Sodexo's history, a worker who complained to the Occupational Safety and Health Committee was fired for making that complaint. This leads to another example of Sodexo's corruption. Now you would think that a modern company with a history of criminally underpaying their employees, unsafe working conditions, multiple discrimination lawsuits, and unlawful firings should be able to fight back with their union. Well, funny you should mention a union. Sodexo was previously known as the largest ununionized food service in America, actively and aggressively fighting against unionizing attempts from their employees. In 2011, Sodexo was accused of illegally detaining and expelling pro-union Sodexo employees from its campus and unlawfully restricting access to the campus, as well as illegally videotaping pro-union Sodexo employees, spying on pro-union employees by permanently posting its police officers outside the cafeteria buildings on its campus, and illegally using police to interrogate pro-union Sodexo employees in the presence of Sodexo managers, and questioning employees regarding the union activities during those interviews. Also, using police illegally to expel union organizers from the location they were at. The union chose to withdraw several charges after Sodexo workers involved in the incidents were too frightened to testify against the company. Sodexo unlawfully fired employees for being pro-union. After pressure from the students' protests and National Labor Relations Board, Sodexo offered to rehire Terry Shelley, an employee that was fired for being pro-union, and settled to pay her $20,000 to avoid court, perpetuating a theme of Sodexo behaving unethically and unlawfully and then throwing money at the issue to make it disappear. Shelley's firing led to one of the many student protests on a college campus. Many of Sodexo's unethical operations have led to protests across the country, with some colleges utilizing the phrase that was created for a protest at Scripps College, "Drop Sodexo," launching websites, Instagram accounts, Facebook groups, articles, and again, protests. While Sodexo's rap sheet for controversies is long, as you just got a glimpse of, the one thing that sparks the most protests and outrage hasn't even been mentioned yet. Ready? Sodexo operates private prisons. Before 2001, Sodexo owned 20% and was the largest investor in the Corrections Corporation of America, now called CoreCivic. the second largest private prison company in the United States, which is notorious for running dangerous, poorly managed prisons without adequate security and medical care. Though Sodexo sold their shares from CoreCivic due to widespread student protests and multiple colleges dropping their contracts, Sodexo has vastly expanded the number of detention centers it operates overseas. On the Sodexo's website, they claim to manage 89 prisons in 10 different countries, while other sources say that they actually manage 122 prisons. It is difficult to say which is fact, so I will only say that Sodexo absolutely and fully operates 6 prisons and is heavily entangled with operating 89 to 122. Private prisons are like other private businesses in the sense that they exist to turn a profit. Studies show that private prisons do not aim to rehabilitate their inmates, but instead aim to lengthen their sentence, which leads to prisons making more profit. In some countries or states, there are capacity quotas that can be as high as 99 or 100%, basically saying that if the prison isn't kept to 99 or 100% capacity, the country or state has to pay up to $3 million. And since they are privately owned, there is less regulation, and they can be underfunded, understaffed, and overcrowded, which can lead to a lot of the problems of Sodexo's subsidiary company, Sodexo Justice Services, which some deem inhumane and deplorable. In 2013, Sodexo Justice Services was criticized in an official report for subjecting a female prisoner to cruel and inhumane, degrading treatment, which appears to amount to torture. The woman was kept segregated from the other prisoners in an unkept and squalid prison cell for more than 5 years. In 2016, a video of naked Sodexo prisoners being forced to pretend to be dogs was found, prompting an investigation into violence and humiliation by Sodexo. In 2018, Sodexo neglected an inmate calling for help for nearly 3 hours, resulting in the death of a female prisoner, Natasha Chen. Members of an organization, Inquest, have pointed to previous neglect-related deaths at the same prison and have suggested that there's no decisive action that has been taken to act in prevention of additional future deaths. And, most recently, in 2019 and 2021, 2 separate women, one being only 18 years old, was forced to give birth alone in their cells, both losing their children. In both cases, the prison is at fault for mishandling the pregnancies. This is not even the full extent of the disregard of human life in the prison system that Sodexo is responsible for running. So to recap, Sodexo, the company responsible for food at hundreds of colleges, schools, and hospitals, and other organizations, owns multiple prisons with death and abuse allegations, has paid their employees enough to qualify them for welfare, as well as provide them with unsafe working conditions, has illegally attempted to prevent unionization of their workers, resorting to firing and spying on their employees, has had multiple discrimination lawsuits, been a part of multiple E. coli outbreaks, listeria outbreaks, mass food poisoning, and serving horse meat. This is the business we want to associate with? These schools cannot argue that we have established a trust with Sodexo. In 2010, the Attorney General announced a $20 million settlement with Sodexo for overcharging 21 New York school districts, as well as the whole SUNY system. For 5 years, Sodexo was receiving rebates from its suppliers without altering the price for these schools, meaning they were overcharging these schools after getting the products for a discount. Sodexo has lied to these schools in the past, leading to them spending more money. The argument that they are the best deal or the most trustworthy has been proven to be false. Students at other colleges have succeeded in getting their institution to cut ties with Sodexo. Years of organizing and protests got Scripps College in California to drop its contract, while Ithaca College just ended its contract a few years ago. Ithaca was able to create its own dining service facilities and provide cheaper meal plans to students with more accountability. Proof that our contracts with Sodexo are not saving us money, nor are they necessary. Our universities claim to be forward-thinking, but they turn a blind eye when it's convenient. Students see the name Sodexo every day when they get their meal. Maybe we should all put more thought into where the food is coming from.